How toxic is Guild Wars 2? So today I'm going to look at how toxic Guild Wars 2 is, and I want to just do a few rounds, and at the end we can summarize everything and actually view at how toxic this game really is.
Round 1. Fight!
So with the player interaction in game, I found it was not as much interaction as I would expect, but let's go through this in areas. So let's tackle PvP first. So when I played a bit of PvP, I realized that in the lower levels there's actually not that much toxicity, which is good for beginners. In the high levels there's quite a bit more toxicity, which you would expect because those people have invested a lot of time and effort and kind of invested themselves into this game. So they are a little bit toxic when they lose or anything. But I did find it very weird how it shifts from for beginners. When I was playing with beginners, I found that the winning team was more toxic than the losing team. But when I played with more experienced people, I found when they were losing they were a lot more toxic to their team than the winning team was to them. With PvP I played about 20 games, and out of that 20 I probably found about 5 that were pretty toxic. Okay, cool. So now we can talk about PvE. PvE, I find that there's actually not much PvE at a lower level. You can get like dungeons and stuff like that, but most of the people that invite you will only invite you if you level 80. But you can get into certain groups if you're lower level. But I find when you do that, they kind of expect a slower run, a few mistakes, a few deaths. Where if you get into a higher one, they expect a fast run with not much trouble. When I got into games of level 80, when they're doing a speedrun of dungeons, I found there was almost no toxicity just because they were just speedrun. So no one was really talking. The whole point was to get in, do it as fast as possible, get out. Get in and get out as fast as you could. So there was not really much toxicity there. Maybe if you were low level and then you joined that, then you could expect a little bit of toxicity by them kicking you or whatever, but it was kind of your fault. I did about 7 dungeons and I didn't really have a problem with anyone, or no one had a problem with anyone during those times.
Round 2. Fight!
Okay, cool. So now we're going to address people's ideas, whether they are true or false, on how toxic this game is. So I've looked around on the internet and I've heard things from people to just find a gist of how toxic they think this game is and where they think the game is toxic. So like I said, a lot of them said that the PvP is very toxic, so a lot of them try to stay away from that, or they just make other arrangements like cut off chat or don't show their build or whatever they're doing, or just play the meta, and that usually keeps everyone happy. So a lot of them said it is very toxic at the top level. I didn't find it as much, but I guess like you kind of zone in on to the specific bad spots more than you do on the good ones, because out of the few games I played with PvP, I didn't really experience much toxicity. But due to the fact that with this game there's like 5 people on your team that you can hear, with this, you know, there is always toxic people in the games, but with PvP you're with like 5 people, so the chance of you getting a toxic person is very slim.
Final round.
So this is going to be my thoughts on the matter. From what I actually see is kind of like a normal game in kind of a fact. If you're going to go and invest a lot of time and effort and you're going to grow to a high level, you're going to face a lot more toxicity than a beginner, and that's kind of what most games should strive for. So if you're a beginner and you're looking to play a game, maybe this is a good game that you won't come across too much toxicity at a low level.
Finish him!
So the summary of the whole thing is that the toxic level is very mild to quite toxic. It could be a lot worse, it could be a lot better. But I think the Guild Wars 2 system is designed for people to actually get along and to not have this much infighting. So they've done a lot of systems to stop people from fighting within Guild Wars 2, and I think it is working, and it is very different to most MMOs, but I think it is working. Not a lot of toxicity that I've seen, but it is interesting. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you're new, please hit subscribe and drop down a comment of the next game you would like me to do this with, or any other stages or things you would like me to implement for the categories. And if you have nothing else to comment, Here's some ideas.